The first forecast is in for the potential swing states in the 2024 presidential election. This time around, it comes down to just 4. Here with the details is Yahoo Finance's senior columnist, Rick Newman. So, Rick, what's the shift that we've seen since 2020?
Yeah, my ears and eyes and ears perk up when I see election forecasts for 2024. So this is from the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia, a prominent forecaster. And they're saying they think it's going to come down to 4 states in 2024 that are going to basically decide the election. Georgia, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. Now, we've seen some shifts in recent election cycles over what actually constitute swing states in the United States. Georgia, for example, did not used to be considered a swing state, but Biden did win Georgia in 2020. And we also got a flip from 2 Republican senators to 2 Democratic senators in Georgia. So Georgia, interestingly, now in the swing state category. A couple others that people might think of as traditional swing states, not so much anymore. I mean, there used to be a saying, as goes Ohio, so goes the nation. Not really true anymore. Ohio has drifted to the right. It's considered a pretty safe Republican state. Even Florida used to be considered a swing state. That has also drifted to the right. And the University of Virginia forecasters are not putting Pennsylvania in that swing state category either. They're saying Pennsylvania leans Democratic. That's for a variety of reasons. Democrats did have a very good year in Pennsylvania in 2022. They flipped a Senate seat, and they also won the governorship in a tight race. So Democrats have some momentum there. All the usual caveats apply. It's very early, and many things could change.
Georgia and Arizona, I mean, those are the 2 states that we saw as flips back in 2020.
Yep.
What are the prospects for the president right now in those states?
You know what? It's going to come down to the economy, as it often does. Now, that's barring any kind of, major surprise, such as a health issue for President Biden, a terrorist attack, a war, all the things that can throw politics into turmoil. But the best rule of thumb for predicting the outcome of an election when an incumbent president is running for re-election, believe it or not, it's not the president's age, it's not the president's gaffes or his stumbles. It's how well the economy is doing in the second quarter of the election year, and then in the third quarter leading straight into the election itself. So when GDP growth looks pretty good in the second quarter of an election year, let's say 2% or better, that is great for an incumbent president. That is usually good enough to get the president over the threshold. A recession would perhaps have the opposite effect. Things have been a little bit different in the last couple of years, obviously, because of inflation. So we have had economic growth. We have GDP growth now, but consumers are pretty gloomy, and Biden's approval rating is pretty low, largely because of inflation. So the sort of best case scenario for Biden, or at least a plausible scenario, I think, is inflation cools down and we still have economic growth this time next year. Would be really good news for Biden, assuming his health holds up. And nothing else surprising happens.
Yeah, we did hear from his chief economic advisor, Lael Brainerd, today, saying she expects inflation to come down to 2% by November 2024, magically during the election. But, you just made up the point about the economy, and that still begs the question about who actually gets credit for a stronger economy. You look at a state like Georgia, I mean, they've done relatively well when you think about the national picture. Does the governor get the credit, or do you think voters still connect that directly to the White House?
I mean, the president typically gets the credit or the blame for what happens in the economy, whether the president deserves it or not. And Biden must feel pretty confuzzled that his approval rating is still down around 40%. That's low. To have a good shot at re-election, he would want that to be much closer to 50%, the high 40s at a minimum. But the reason is pretty clear. It's just inflation. And even though inflation has dropped from a high of 9% last year to 4% this year, number one, I think consumers are shell-shocked by some of the price increases they've seen. And number two, we don't have deflation. So the price increases that we've seen during the last 2 years are still there. We've now got the annualized rate of price increases close to under control, but we're not going back to the lower prices we had 2 years ago. So incomes have been falling behind inflation. until just the last month. Only in the last month did we see real income growth for the first time in 2 years. Now, if we can see that sustained for a year, I think consumers will start to feel better about Biden, and that'll improve his odds. Of course, the big question is we're going to have whether we're going to have this recession that everybody keeps talking about, but keeps not showing up.
Still the big question there. Rick Newman, as always, thanks so much for that.